real to the consciousness in its status and its action, and to become that by merging the sense of separate individuality in the sense of unity with the being and with all beings in its effectuation in yoga of knowledge to live, think, feel, will, and act in that sense of unity in its effectuation in the individual being and the individual life. This realization of oneness and this practice of oneness in difference is the whole of the yoga.
Yeah. So he is explaining that unity is the most important thing. You have to realize that there is ultimately only one. So when when you make your mind silent and go to the mind is the one that breaks up. It's the one that breaks it up, like the prism. It breaks up the one white light into many colors. Exactly in the same way, it's a mind principle that starts breaking up, making the many. Breaking seems to be very negative, but it's not negative. It is creating the multiplicity. Okay, so you can call it breaking up, but it creates a multiplicity. All the forms that are there. So in the physical world, we are seeing multiplicity, and we think that that's a reality. Actually, it is not. The oneness is the reality. So we have to go beyond the mind. The mind is the one that is breaking. So go beyond the mind and realize the oneness of things. Everything is one at the heart. And in fact, when it translates into a practical realization, you realize that yourself is the self of all. Your body is common to the elements that compose your body are common to everybody. Okay, whatever it be, flesh, bones. Everybody also has got flesh, bones. Even the chemical components are all the same. So that's one thing you realize, and you realize also that your soul, your individual soul, although it seems to be different, and it is different, the individual soul is different from other souls, yet there is an essential unity. It's all one divine nature. There is multiplicity as well as unity. So that's what he's saying. We'll now read because it's a very small para, so we'll read each sentence and see whether it's clear. But before that, again to get the continuity, I'll read out to you the summary of what he has said in the earlier para so that we get the link of what he's saying. Otherwise, it seems a little because we are meeting after 1 week. So we have to get this. What he's saying in the previous para. When the soul lives in the active Brahman and the passive Brahman simultaneously, in other words, when your soul is absolutely calm and quiet and your body mind life is acting in the physical world, not in the old way, but now in the new way, because you're being guided by the soul which is silent and telling you what to do and what not to do. Okay, so it's a totally different thing. When the soul lives in the active Brahman in the physical world acting, but not in the old way, and the passive Brahman simultaneously, then it is stationed in the lower hemisphere, but without being subjected to the senses and the ignorance and the multiplicity. You are not subject to multiplicity and the senses. And if you are subject to the senses, you will feel the pain, pleasure, and the impact of the external forces coming into you. Okay, but if you are not stationed inside, the body-mind life will react, but you are not reacting at all. You are in the passive Brahman consciousness. Okay, then he's saying it then possesses Satchidananda on all the manifested planes of existence. You have the realization of Satchidananda on all the planes, right from the highest to the lowest. This is the aim of the integral yoga, not the other yogas. Okay, the soul experiences the oneness and the multiplicity simultaneously on all the planes of existence, and that too in a harmonious way. This is what he said in the previous para. The traditional knowledge accepts the truth of the active and the passive Brahman, yet in practice considers oneness to be more manifest in the higher planes and less manifested in the lower planes. In fact, they make a difference between the two. Swamdha says, no, it need not be like that. You are stopping in the middle. Don't stop in the middle. Go to the extreme level. You will see that it is possible to have fully the oneness even while you are in the physical world. Okay? It claims that in the lower hemisphere, oneness cannot be experienced fully. Who is claiming? The traditional yoga. Traditional yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, they are saying that oneness is more experienced in the higher planes and not in the lower planes. Okay? The oneness, according to it, the traditional path, can be experienced fully only in the transcendent, the silent, the immutable, the passive Brahman, the impersonal. Only there where you are, then you can experience fully the oneness, the Nirguna. Maybe there is an element of truth in that, but Srindu says you can even make the extreme, go to the extreme limit and even make the oneness absolutely physical and practical even in the physical world. But not so fully in the lower planes of body mind life. Thus, the traditional path places these planes, okay, these planes I am now listing them, the individual consciousness, the active Brahman, the mutable, the personal divine, the Saguna, below their opposites, okay, below their opposites. And finally, even reject them as unnecessary to get the oneness, and they can even be serious obstacles to attain oneness in the higher hemisphere. This is the traditional path. The traditional path says the highest is the best. Okay, the individual consciousness, the active Brahman is the supermind, the mutable and the personal divine. Okay, and the Saguna, and below their opposites are finally even reject them, and below their opposites. Sorry, I made a mistake. The mutable, the personal divine is all at the lower level. Okay, and they are saying it's better to go to the higher level, which is the opposite of all this. So the individual consciousness is below, the cosmic consciousness is above, the active Brahman is below, the passive Brahman is above, the mutable is below, the immutable is above, the personal divine, okay, at the highest level it is the impersonal divine, according to them. The Saguna is also below, okay, and Nirguna is above. So in the Nirguna, you will find the real divine. Sri of course does not agree with that, but this is the traditional path. And finally, the traditional path even rejects the lower, okay, as unnecessary to get the oneness, and they can even be serious obstacles to attain oneness in the higher hemisphere. They say, why to unnecessarily create complications? Make it simple and go up and reject the lower. Srimda does not want to reject the lower also, although it's much more difficult, but he wants to do that. But in the integral yoga, does not differentiate the oneness in the upper and the lower. It maintains, the integral yoga maintains that oneness is attainable on all planes, even if it be more difficult. The oneness is equal on all planes of Purusha and Prakriti, in the active as well as in the passive Brahman. So we may say to the realized soul, when we say, we may say, Sri Aurobindo, he's saying that we can say, put it in this way. To the realized soul, all unity is an intense, pure, infinite realization. All difference is an abundant, rich, boundless realization of the one and only divine and eternal being. In other words, what you are saying as obstacles, so they're saying it's not obstacles. It is all the possibilities of the divine he is expressing himself. Okay? Everything that is there is being expressed. That's what he's saying. That's what he said in the previous one. Now we read each one in the lower. So, he has spoken about the realization of unity on all the planes. So he continues now with a small para. The complete realization of unity is therefore the essence of the integral knowledge and the integral yoga. In yoga, in integral yoga, you cannot station yourself only above and reject the lower. It is therefore the essence of the integral yoga and the integral yoga, integral knowledge as well as the yoga. To know Satchidananda, one in himself and one in all manifestation. Now we have to understand in himself and in all manifestation. The in himself is the transcendent. In other words, when he is in himself, there is no connection with the universe and the individual. It is a highest level where only he exists. So to know the divine where only he exists is one. Okay, the transcendent. So you have to use the word transcendent. Here he's saying in himself. And one in all manifestation, that's a cosmic. The divine is there in the cosmos also. So that also you have to realize is the basis of the knowledge. You have to, the individual has to know the divine in himself at the highest level and in the cosmos. To make that, he's talking of the knowledge aspect, okay, so that's why. To make that vision of oneness real to the consciousness in its status and in its action. The status, it implies immutability, but also in the action of the physical world where everything is moving, okay. See the divine everywhere, okay, even in all the action, in its action, and to become that, you have to become the divine in the physical world also by merging the sense of separate individuality in the sense of unity with the being and with all beings. This put a being in cap and with all beings, all the creatures in the physical world. Okay? Being is the abstract, the cosmic being, and with all beings in the physical world is its effectuation in yoga of knowledge. You feel yourself one with everybody and everything also. You see yourself in everything. To live, think, feel. Okay, when you are reading, you must be very careful about the punctuation. Okay, it is not yoga of knowledge to live, think. There is a semicolon there. You have to stop there. When you stop there, he goes on to another idea. Okay, to live, think, feel, will, and act. Now, just see. He is including everything from the mind to the body. Live, think, feel, will, and act. In that sense of unity is its effectuation in the individual being and the individual life. It's not enough to only know the divine, but also to live him in the physical world. I think there's a very interesting 3-line sentence of Mother's. She says, to know is good, okay, to live is better, but to become is best. So there's a shadow of that in this. Okay, it's not enough to only know the divine. You have to live the divine and also become the divine. Okay, so to live, think, feel, will, and act in that sense of unity is its effectuation in the individual being and the individual life. What is meant by individual being and individual life? Individual being in your soul, but individual life even in the body-mind life. Okay, you have to realize the divine everywhere. This realization of oneness and this practice of oneness in difference. Note that. Don't stress indifference. Okay. This realization of oneness and this practice, again, he is talking of two things. Realization is the knowledge aspect, but practice to live and become, and this practice of oneness in difference. You are fully aware of oneness and yet you are seeing everybody separately and realizing that they are all separate. If you live only in the oneness, you can't live in the physical world. Not possible. But if you are living in the physical world, you see only the difference. But you have to see both together. That's what Swami is saying. It's the whole of the yoga. Of the yoga. The interior yoga. So, now that we have read that, so in very short, summarizing of the small para. As stated in the previous para, for the integral yoga, complete realization of unity is the goal. Unity means oneness with everybody else. The ego disappears and you don't feel yourself to be only separate from others. It is the integral knowledge that the integral yoga seeks, not a partial knowledge, as is acceptable to many other systems. To be specific, to know Satchidananda within oneself and all manifestation, individual and cosmic, to make that vision of oneness real to the consciousness in the one and the many, to the static silence and the dynamic action. Third, to become by oneness, by merging our separate individuality into the Supreme Being and with all other beings. I am the same as everybody else. Practically, you come to know his thoughts, his emotions, and his even problems, and also the capacities that he has. To make that knowledge of oneness a practical truth by living it, thinking it, feeling it, willing it, and active. This is the ultimate aim of the integral yoga, to realize oneness and to practice it in life, in the dynamism of the many, in the difference of the multiplicity. In the dynamism, you will bring down the oneness right down to the bottom. In other words, very simple language, God at the highest level is not enough. God must be at the lowest level also. That's what I'm saying in different words. Okay? That's what it is. We go on to the next sentence. Shanta's yoga is the most difficult. It wants the ultimate. So, we read the next one.
Shall I read Rangata?
Yeah, please do that. Satchidananda is one in himself.
Sunki, go ahead.
Okay, I will read.
Yeah, read.
Go ahead. Okay. Satchidananda is one in himself in whatever status or whatever plane of existence. We have therefore to make that the basis of all effectuation, whether of consciousness or force or being, whether of knowledge or will or delight. We have, as we have seen, to live in the consciousness of the absolute transcendent and of the absolute manifested in all relations, impersonal and manifest as all personalities, beyond all qualities and rich in infinite quality, a silence out of which the eternal word creates a divine calm and peace possessing itself in infinite joy and activity. We have to find him knowing all, sanctioning all, upholding and informing all as the Purusha, and at the same time executing all knowledge, will, and formation as Prakriti. We have to see him as one existence, being gathered in itself and being displayed in all existences. As one consciousness concentrated in the unity of its existence, extended in universal nature, and many-centered in innumerable beings. One force static in its repose of self-gathered consciousness, and dynamic in its activity of extended consciousness. One delight blissfully aware of its featureless infinity, and blissfully aware of all feature and force and forms as itself. One creative knowledge and governing will, supramental, originative, and determinative of all minds, lives and bodies. One mind containing all mental beings and constituting all their mental activities. One life active in all living beings and generative of their vital activities. One substance constituting all forms and objects as the visible and sensible mode in which mind and life manifest and act, just as one pure existence is that ether in which one pure existence is that ether in which all conscious force and delight exist, unified, and find themselves variously. For these are the 7 principles of the manifested being of Satchidananda.
Okay. Actually, I have lost the page. My computer is playing games with me. So, tell me the page number again, please.
420, Rangadhar. 420.
Yeah, my computer jumped and okay. Yeah, I've got it. Okay. So such
Last line.
Yeah, that's right. So now we come to, yeah, that's right. So we'll okay, I'll do one thing. I'll read out the summary and then we'll go into each detail. In this longish para, it's 1 page. So he's saying Satchidananda is a one single principle, not 3 or 4. Okay? It's all one. If Shakti is also counted, okay, you have to include all 3 if you say Satchidananda. But if you count Shakti also, it becomes 4. So it's all one. Okay, they are not separate truths. But this true in whatever state he may be. So at the highest level, in the middle levels, as well as in the lowest level, Satchidananda is always one, he's saying. Essentially, in the physical world, matter, consciousness and Ananda are separate. But essentially, even in matter, if you go to the essence, to the root of things, you will see that it's all one. Okay, that's what he's saying. It gets covered up. It seems to be broken, but actually there is a unity inside, even in matter. So on all levels, Satchidananda is one. That's what he's saying. In whatever state. He may be, Satchidananda may be, by the way, he's using the word he here. That means Satchidananda is a person, but it can also be impersonal. Satchidananda, you don't think of him as a person, but the Purushottama, the Ishvara, is a person. So he may be static, okay? He may be absolutely without any movement. He may be immutable, or he may be dynamic, mutable in the physical world. He is moving everywhere. It is he who is there everywhere. This is true on any of the 7 planes of existence. On all the planes of existence, both are there, the dynamic as well as the mutable. But they are in different proportions, that's all. At the highest level, there is total immutability, but the mutability is potentially there. In other words, you can say mutability is Prakriti and immutability is Purusha. Okay? So at the highest level, it is Purusha, but Prakriti is capable of manifesting itself even at that level. Then as you keep coming down, Prakriti becomes more and more apparent and Purusha starts hiding himself until finally when you come down to matter, Purusha has completely hidden himself in matter. The divine presence everywhere is hiding, and Prakriti, body, mind, life, okay, matter, life and mind becomes absolutely visible to everybody. But behind, even in matter, even in Prakriti, there is the consciousness, there is the Purusha. So this is what he's saying. This is true on any of the 7 planes of existence. In fact, in another place he says that every plane of consciousness can be defined by the relation of Purusha and Prakriti. Okay, I'll go a little more into detail on this. At the highest level, we can say, for our understanding, okay, in very crude way, Purusha is 100%, okay, and Prakriti is 0%. Okay? Because it is not visible. But now I will amend that a little bit and say not 100%, but 99.999%. Because and Prakriti at the highest level is 0.0001%. As it keeps coming down, this percentage changes, okay, and Prakriti starts becoming more and more apparent, and Purusha starts hiding himself and becoming less and less apparent, until finally in matter, Purusha has become 0.0001% and Prakriti has become 99.999%. Okay, a very crude way of putting it, but you can understand what is being said. Okay, so essentially at the highest level, the lowest level also is there, and in the lowest level, the highest also is hiding and is there. In other words, matter is essentially divine, not in form, but essence, in secretly hiding there. Okay? This is what he says. Now I go on to the next. This is true on any of the 7 planes of existence. Then he is saying, therefore, the integral yogin must aim at realizing the Satchidananda in the transcendent, the absolute, as well as the cosmic relativity. You must realize him in the transcendent, in himself, and also in the cosmic relativity. Okay? And this has to be the basis of all action. Realize him, realize the divine in himself as well as the universe. This has to be the basis of action, whether of knowledge or of will or of delight. You have to know him in all these ways. Okay? Sat, Chit, Shakti, Ananda. In all the aspects, you have to know the divine on all the planes of consciousness. That's what he's basically saying. Okay? So, then he goes on. We have to discover him as knowing all. Okay? That means he is conceiving. That's the highest level, the real idea. Okay? He knows everything in essence. But he sanctions everything also, and he says, go ahead and become the reality. The blueprint. He knows the blueprint of everything. He is the seed of everything, and he tells each seed, start becoming what you are meant to be. Okay? So that's the sanctioning. Anumanta. Okay? Is executing. And then governing all. He's governing all. He's making them absolutely. He's going into each thing and governing it. Okay? Then we have to experience Satchidananda in our pure existence, one single substance and being. We have to experience the Satchidananda as one consciousness. First of all, substance, then consciousness, and then we have to also experience him as force. And we have to also experience him as delight, blissfully aware of himself, alone and fully aware of himself in all and the universe. So, Sri Aurobindo is so comprehensive. It's not enough to know the divine only in knowledge. You must also know him in force. You must also know him in delight. Okay? Usually, only one aspect is realized by human beings, and they feel that that's the ultimate. Okay? We have so many different philosophies, that's why. We have to experience, as they say now, we have to experience Satchidananda as one mind containing all other individual minds. Okay? We have to experience Satchidananda as the one life inherent in all life forms and generating ceaselessly all their activities. We have to experience the Satchidananda as one substance which becomes all forms, one mold which contains all others. These are the 7 principles of Satchidananda in its manifestation. This is what he's saying. Very difficult. You have to realize him from top to bottom, and not only divine, but in all his aspects. That is, as substance, as consciousness, as force, as well as delight. Obviously not easy, but that's what he wants. Only then will a divine life on earth be possible. Otherwise it won't be possible. You will only come to know parts of him, which is until now that has been happening. Every philosophy is the expression of one particular experience of the divine. So that's it. Now we can go on to the next para, the integral yoga of knowledge. 1 page, a little less than a page. We can read. I think Archanadi was thinking of reading,
Yes,
right?
I can read.
Yeah, go
Yes,
ahead.
Rangaja. The integral yoga of knowledge has to recognize the double nature of this manifestation. For there is the higher nature of Sachidanand in which he is found, and the lower nature of mind, life, and body in which he is veiled. And to reconcile and unite the two in the oneness of the illumined realization, we have to leave them separate so that we live a sort of double life, spiritual within or above, mental and material inner, active and earthly living. We have to review and remold the lower living in the light, force, and joy of the higher reality. We have to realize matter as a sense created mold of spirit, a vehicle for all manifestation of the light, force, and joy of Sachidanand in the highest conditions of terrestrial being and activity. We have to see life as a channel for the infinite force divine and break the barrier of a sense created and mind created farness and division from it so that the divine power may take possession of and direct and change all our life activities until our vitality transfigured ceases in the end to be the limited life force which now supports mind and body and becomes a figure of the all blissful conscious force of Sachidanand. We have similarly to change our sensational and emotional mentality into a play of the divine love and universal delight. And we have to surcharge the intellect, which seeks to know and will in us with the light of the divine knowledge will until it is transformed into a figure of that higher and sublime activity.
Yeah. Okay. So again, there's some sort of repetition, but he's making it very clear. He's going into details. I'm reading out the summary of what he's saying. The integral yoga does not reject the physical world as the ascetic does. He sees spirit and matter as two poles of the same reality. This is the Sri Aurobindo's view. Matter also is divine, essentially. Okay, it sees spirit and matter as two poles of the same reality. Spirit is the higher nature of the Satchidananda, in which supreme divine is found. The supreme divine is found in spirit at the highest level. In his lower nature of body, life, and mind, he is veiled. Okay? You don't see him, he is veiled. But if you make an effort, you can see him. It is the work of the integral yogin to reconcile the two and unite them. Okay? It has to marry the soil to the sky. That's the phrase that he uses in God's labor. Okay? You have to marry the soil to the sky. The ascetic is not doing that. He is divorcing the soil from the sky. The integral yogin cannot, should not, and ought not to have a double life. Perfect in spirit above, but and within, ignorant in activity in body-mind life. This is the normal traditional yoga which is satisfied with that. Okay? My consciousness has risen to the highest level and I'm more than satisfied. I don't care for body-mind life because in any case it's going to disappear after some time. The Sri Aurobindo says no, even this has to become perfect. Because when you do it at the individual level, it can also become at the universal level, and even matter will be changed one day, okay? And not fully, but part of it will become spiritual matter. Right now, there is material matter, there is living matter, there is thinking matter, and finally one day there will be spiritual matter. Okay, so that's what he's saying. Okay. In fact, the lower has to be remolded and rebuilt also in the image of the higher. The integral yoga, therefore, must see matter as a mold for the spirit to occupy it as a dwelling. Matter should be a house for him to dwell. But the house has to be pure. Okay? Your body has to be pure. In other words, if it is subject to death and disease, it is impure. Why should the divine come into it? Okay, you won't. It has to become pure. Okay? But you have to make that. Your body has to become a fit dwelling place for the divine. Okay? This mold is created by the senses. Okay? Then, life as a channel for the infinite. You have to make life as a channel for the infinite divine force to break the sense-created fortress which divides the upper from the lower. Okay? Your senses must become subtle senses, and life, which is life in you, should become the divine force. In other words, if you purify your life of three things: ego, desire, and attachment. If you remove these three things from your life, it will become pure and the divine can enter into it. The divine force can enter into it, which divides the upper from the lower, from spirit and matter. Then the vital mind, sensational and emotional mind, as permitting the universal love and delight. Okay? The vital mind and the emotional mind must be able to become pure so that the universal love and delight can enter into it. The pure mind, intellect, has to be filled and charged with the divine knowledge so that it can become the sublime divine activity. So all has to be purified. The lower has to be purified so that the higher can occupy it. That's what he's saying in the paragraph. That would be the integral yoga. Not for the others. They don't bother about it. Okay, so what's the time? They got 10 minutes more. So we can read one more para today. The formation cannot. By the way, Archana ji, yesterday you were asking about the Swabhava and Swadharma. Okay, So tomorrow is the essence of the Gita, and I have started again checking all on the in the Gita as well as in the essays on the Gita. So those essays on the Gita. It is beautiful. He has explained so well. So tomorrow dwell a little on the idea of Swabhava and Swadharma. Okay. I hope it becomes clear.
Okay, thank you, Rangadas.
Yes, I've been checking that
Yeah.
and we will discuss that. There is also some discussion with Geeta. She is not there today on the line, but she was saying, because she also reads the Gita, but the gunas, she was saying, but the gunas are not connected. So we'll discuss this tomorrow.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So now we can read. I think we have got 8 minutes. So we can read the next one. One.
Very
Yes, Shilpa, yes.
integral yoga.
Yeah.
The integral yoga of knowledge has to recognize the double nature of this manifestation. For there is the higher nature of Satchidananda in which he is found, and the lower nature of mind, life, and body in which he is veiled. And to reconcile and unite the two in the oneness of the illuminated realization, we have not to leave them separate so that we live a sort of double life, spiritual within or above, mental.
Is this para not what we read just now? I think this is the para we read just now, na?
We have to read from the transformation cannot
Oh,
be
sorry.
complete.
Exactly.
I'll read that.
422.
Yes, yeah. The transformation cannot be complete. Read from there.
This transformation cannot be complete or really executed without the awakening of the truth mind, which corresponds in the mental being to the supermind and is capable of receiving mentally its illumination. By the opposition of spirit and mind, without the free opening of this intermediate power of the two natures, higher and lower stand divided, and though there may be communication and influence or the catching up of the lower into higher in a sort of luminous or aesthetic trance, there cannot be a full and perfect transfiguration of the lower nature. We may feel imperfectly by the emotional mind, we may have a sense by the sense mind or a conception and perceptions by the intelligent mind of the spirit present in the matter and all its forms, the divine delight present in all emotion and sensation, the divine force behind all activities, but the lower will still keep its own nature and limit and divide in its action and modify in its character the influence from above. Even when that influence assumes its highest, widest, intensest power, it will be irregular and disorderly in activity and perfectly realized only in calm and stillness. We shall be subject to reactions and periods of obscuration when it is withdrawn from us. We shall be apt to forget in it the stress of ordinary life and its outward touches and the siege of its dualities, and to be fully possessed of it only when alone with ourselves and God, or else only in moments or periods of a heightened exhalation and ecstasy. For our mentality, a restricted instrument moving in a limited field and seizing things by fragments and parcels is necessary shifting, restless and mustable. It can find steadiness only by limiting its field of action and fixity only by cessation and repose.
Okay. All right. So we have 5 minutes. So I will do one thing today. I just read out the summary of what he's saying. Okay. He has told you that you have to remold the lower in the light of the higher. That is the integral yoga. The essence of integral yoga is to divinize your body, mind, life. So what he's saying now, the transformation of the lower nature of body, life, mind, that the integral yoga envisages is not possible without attaining to the supermind. Okay? Only when you go to the supermind, this is what I am saying is possible. That's what he's saying. The normal mind must be sufficiently remolded to receive the illuminations of the supermind. At present, the mind is full of darkness, so it cannot receive the light. So all the darkness has to be removed and the mind must become supple and transparent. And when it becomes transparent, the light can come in. The light cannot come into a dark room, okay, because of the substance. But if the supermind is not attained or freely opened, the division between spirit and matter cannot be bridged. You have to go to the supramental level to be able to do what I'm saying you have to do. There can be a communication between the two poles. There can even be a temporary rising of the lower nature into the higher nature. In a trance condition, not in a waking state, but in a trance condition. But these are not the final and perfect transfiguration needed. You can experience a supermind. Not easy, but it can be done. But that's not what is wanted in the integral yoga. It is possible for the emotional mind to feel imperfectly the supramental reality in matter. Imperfectly. You can feel the divine supramental presence in matter for the emotional mind. It is possible. The manas, the sense mind, to become sense, the supramental reality in matter. Then the pure mind to conceive and perceive the supramental reality in matter. All this is possible, but only temporarily. The yogin may feel the divine delight everywhere. He may see the divine force in all life activities. But in spite of all this, the lower nature may preserve its imperfections, and the fundamental gulf between spirit and matter cannot be abolished unless you go to the supramental level. Even at its highest pitch of the lower nature, the supramental experience can be possible only in moments of quiet contemplation or high exaltation. Okay, your soul can rise temporarily into higher levels. In the thick activity of worldly life, it will be forgotten. That's what he's saying. If you have a temporary experience. Again, in moments of utter solitude or high aspirational states, the touch of the supermind may be possible, but not a permanent settling, of the surface body-mind life into the higher nature. This is bound to happen given the fickleness, mutability, restlessness of the normal mind. Okay. Experience is possible, but to remain settled in the supermind is very difficult. That's what Shraddha is pointing out. The only solution is total silence in the mind. Only then is it possible. Total silence in the mind, then you can rise to the supramental level and live there. But that has not yet happened as yet. Okay, it will happen one day, as Shraddha says. 8:34. So we will stop here today because we have come to the end of the time scheduled. Okay, so I'll make a note. So this is synthesis Friday, and I have to type here. Friday, and we are on page 423. 420. We have to read from we have to read from 422, na? The transformation. Read 422, the transformation.
No, Ranjana, 423.
Okay. Then, yeah, that's right. So, we finished our direct
truth perception.
Our direct
Yes,
truth
Ranjana.
perception.
Truth
Right.
perception.
Au revoir, everybody. Have a nice day. See you tomorrow.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay, and we'll discuss the Swabhava and Swadharma tomorrow. Okay.